The Logos War Saga by William L. Weaver, Ph.D. Read by Google Gemini for Workspace. Persuader Voice. Series Summary. For 50 years, the grand story of physics has stalled, leaving the greatest questions of the universe unanswered. Jaron Miles, a brilliant but ostracized Ph.D. candidate, believes it's because everyone is reading the book upside down. Armed with a controversial theory that reality is not built on random chance but on a deep, underlying language, he works in isolation, using a scavenged supercomputer to search for a signal in the cosmic static. When a daring experiment yields an impossible result, Jaron gets his proof. The universe has a source code, and he is the first human to read a single word of it. But his discovery does not bring accolades. Instead, it triggers alarms in the deepest corridors of power. A clandestine agency known as Continuity, tasked with preserving global stability at any cost, sees his breakthrough not as a revelation, but as a threat to the very fabric of a fragile reality. Thrust into a world of shadows and secrets, Jaron is forced to run, hunted by an enemy with limitless resources who believes the only way to save the world is to silence him. But his discovery has also sent a ripple across the cosmos, a beacon that is finally answered. He soon finds himself caught between the ruthless forces of human control and the arrival of mysterious, powerful allies from beyond Earth, who reveal that his small experiment has just made him a key player in a secret, universe-spanning war that has raged for eons. The Logos War is an epic science fantasy saga where the search for a grand unified theory becomes a desperate struggle for survival. It is a story that blends the intellectual rigor of hard science fiction with the mythic scope of classic fantasy, asking a single, profound question. In a universe where reality itself can be rewritten, what is the final word? Book 1, The Great Unraveling. Chapter 1, The Static. The air in Dr. Alistair Finch's office was a carefully preserved artifact. It smelled of things that had stopped changing. The slow, sweet decay of paper in the leather-bound journals that lined the walls, the faint, resinous scent of the dark wood paneling, the ghost of chalk dust from a bygone era. It was a shrine to stasis, and Jaron Miles felt its gravity in his bones. Every framed diploma, every yellowed photograph of Finch standing beside a gleaming, vacuum-sealed experiment from the late 90s, was a testament to a world of established, unchanging order. It was a museum dedicated to the last time anyone had discovered anything truly new. Finch slid a single sheet of paper across the polished expanse of his mahogany desk. The motion was frictionless, practiced. It was Jaron's latest progress report, and the gesture felt less like an offering and more like the final, regretful move in a lost game of chess. The board was impressed, Jaron. Genuinely, Finch began, his voice a well-worn instrument of paternalistic weariness. He steepled his fingers, a gesture Jaron had come to recognize as the prelude to a gentle but firm course correction. Your work on the yttrium-barium copper oxide lattice is elegant, a novel approach to high-temperature superconductivity. They see a clear path to publication, nature physics perhaps, a strong start to a promising career. Jaron said nothing, letting the silence stretch. He knew the turn was coming, the inevitable but that always followed praise for the tangible parts of his work. The superconductors were a means to an end, a clever hack to build the machine he actually needed. But to Finch, they were the only part of his research that was real. But this, Finch's manicured finger tapped the second half of the report, the part that mattered. The paper seemed to curl away from his touch. This informational field theory, they see it as a distraction. A dead end. He leaned forward, his tone softening, shifting from judge to recruiter. Jaron, I've been on the tenure committee for 20 years. I know how this game is played. You need solid, reproducible results. There's a position on the gravitational lensing project. Good funding. Access to the Atacama data. It's safe, Jaron. It's science. The word hung in the air. A carefully weighted accusation. Safe. That was the word that defined the last half-century of physics. After the grand unification theories of the 20th century had stalled, after the promise of string theory had dissolved into a landscape of untestable mathematics, the entire field had retreated into the safety of incrementalism. No one was looking for new continents anymore. They were just refining the maps of the old one. It's also a 50-year-old problem with a 50-year-old toolset, Jaron countered, his voice tighter than he'd intended. He forced himself to relax, to unclench his fists under the table. Dr. Finch, the patterns are there. I'm not just speculating. Echo has cross-referenced every cosmological survey since Penzias and Wilson first found the hiss. There's a signal in the cosmic background radiation, a coherent, non-random structure hidden in the noise. It's faint, but it's there. Noise is noise! Finch's voice sharpened, the weary professor replaced by the hardened experimentalist. He leaned back, the leather of his chair groaning in protest. Good God, man, do you hear yourself? You sound like a Pythagorean mystic. The universe isn't writing you poetry in the static. It's a chaotic system, and your AI is a pattern-matching algorithm. It will find patterns in anything if you let it. That's its job. Finch stood and walked to the window, his back to Jaren. He looked out over the manicured lawns of the university. A perfect, ordered world. I spent 6 years of my life in a lead-lined room at the bottom of a salt mine, Jaren. 6 years, trying to shield a single gram of niobium from the universe just to get a clean reading on its decay rate. My entire career was built on the brutal, painstaking work of eliminating noise. You're inviting it in for tea. He turned back, and the look on his face was one of profound, genuine disappointment. It's not science, it's numerology. The word was a physical blow, the most profound insult one physicist could level at another. It dismissed his life's work as a form of magical thinking, a sophisticated reading of tea leaves in the static of creation. Jaren felt a hot flash of anger, a desire to shout, to throw the years of data, the elegant mathematics of his theory, onto the man's pristine desk. But it was quickly extinguished by the cold weight of the man's conviction. Finch wasn't being cruel. He was being kind, in his own rigid, suffocating way. He was trying to save a drowning man by chaining him to the dock. Defeated but not broken, Jaren reached across the desk and took back his report. The paper felt heavy, a summary of a future that was now closing to him. You have until the end of the month to give the board a new research proposal, Jaren, Finch said, his voice softening again into that paternalistic drone. A real one. Focus on the superconductors. That's your ticket. Don't throw your future away chasing ghosts. Jaren nodded, unable to trust his own voice. He stood, the legs of his chair scraping softly on the hardwood floor. He turned and walked out of the office, the heavy oak door closing behind him with a soft, final click that sounded like a lock turning. The hallway of the physics department was a monument to silence, the polished linoleum floors reflecting the cold, sterile light of the overhead panels. It was a temple where the gods had long since departed, leaving only the catechism. He passed labs where brilliant minds were dutifully refining the measurements of known constants to another decimal place, gilding the bars of their own cages. They were all good scientists, all doing safe work, all contributing their own small, polished stones to the cairn of established knowledge. None of them were looking at the sky. Rough meeting? The voice belonged to Ben Carter, another PhD candidate. Ben was everything Jaren wasn't. Clean-shaven, gregarious, and working on a project so conventional it had been pre-approved for a Department of Defense grant. He was a good guy, but his mind ran on rails Jaren couldn't even see. You could say that, Jaren managed, forcing a weak smile. Finch giving you the publish or perish speech again. Ben fell into step beside him, his easy confidence, a stark contrast to Jaren's coiled tension. He's just trying to look out for you, man. That stuff you're doing, it's out there. Why don't you just give him a couple of papers on the superconductors? Bank some goodwill with the board, then go back to your patterns. Jaren stopped, turning to face him. Because the superconductors aren't the point, Ben. They're just the engine. The patterns are the destination. He tried to explain it then, the sheer statistical impossibility of the geometric structures Echo was finding in the microwave background. He spoke of the 14-dimensional manifold his theory predicted, the idea that the universe was a projection of a higher dimensional reality, and that the noise was the shadow of its true language. Ben's eyes glazed over. It was a look Jaren knew well. It was the polite, patient expression of someone waiting for a madman to finish his sermon. Right, Ben said, clapping him on the shoulder. Sounds cool. Hey, I gotta run. My simulation on quark gluon plasma just finished. The data looks, well, it looks exactly like the last 50 simulations. But hey, that's reproducibility, right? He gave a cheerful, oblivious wave and disappeared into a lab. Jaren stood alone in the hallway, the silence rushing back in. It wasn't just the old guard like Finch. It was his own generation. They were all content to color inside the lines, to confirm what was already known. The frustration from his meeting with Finch curdled into a hard, cold resolve. If no one else would listen, he would just have to get a result so loud they couldn't ignore it. He ignored the elevator, taking the stairs down, his footsteps echoing in the stairwell. With each flight, the oppressive silence began to recede. Past the undergraduate labs with their neatly arranged oscilloscopes, past the main lecture halls, down into the sub-basement where the air grew thick with the smell of ozone and machine oil. Here, the silence was finally broken by a familiar, comforting hum that grew louder as he approached a heavy, unmarked fire door stenciled with the words, Annex, Authorized Personnel Only. It was the sound of his creation, the sound of emergence. He pushed the door open and stepped from the cold, sterile light into the chaotic, vibrant darkness of the annex. He was home. Attribution. This material was developed through a collaborative conversation between myself and Google Gemini.